Oh, it's really good today because we've got RolexWhisky in the house talking about whiskey, and we've had just a 5 or 10 minute chat before we hit the record button. And there's so much stuff to talk about. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to Clandestine Whiskey.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us, man. Me, us. There's no us. I get people hitting me up like, "Hey guys," like I'm like, "That's just one dude. I'm the guy that pushes all the buttons when I feel like it." So I appreciate you having me.
No, you're the man. I mean, your growth has been phenomenal. You got something like 165,000 followers on Instagram the last time I saw you. Are a genuine influencer, And how do you feel about that from someone who just started, collecting out whiskey to put up a fund to send your kids to college?
Well, it's been an interesting 5, 6 years. When I started, I kind of just Instagram was never the thing. I used Instagram to get deals on whiskey. I mean, I remember having like 15,000 followers and walking into a liquor store who didn't have an online store and saying, "Hey, if you give me the bottles at just retail and not secondary pricing, I will mention it on my whiskey Instagram and I guarantee the phone will ring." And I didn't know if the phone was going to ring. I was just like, "Hey, I want to get a deal." And he's like, "All right, cool." I paid for it. I walked out, posted where I bought it. Guy called me 2 days later. He's like, "Dude, the phone hasn't stopped ringing. Everybody's calling." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I see leverage here. So I'm going to use this Rolex whiskey thing to get me deals on bottles and offer advertising to liquor stores." Now, that was probably only like a whopping 4 years ago. So in 4 years, almost every liquor store has an online store now.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. 4 years ago, they had nothing. They actually depended on people physically walking in. And in 4 years, they all go, "I don't give a shit about people walking in." You walk in, they got bubble wrap everywhere. They're like Chicago, New York, London. And it's like, so the game changed because they don't need me. You want to get a deal? Get out of here, dude. I got a guy in Chicago that'll pay whatever I say the price is. So yeah, it's been a fun process, and I've watched the whole thing change, and I just want to use what I have now really for an educational tool to bring knowledge to people about other great brands that don't have billions of dollars in advertising.
That's really good.
I still collect. Of course, I collect. But I mean, I don't buy even 1/50th of what I was buying 4 or 5 years ago because I won't overpay.
No.
I just bought those new Yamazakis, and I like a tear came out of my eye when I paid for them. But I'm like, well, would you rather never buy Tesla? Yeah, you didn't get Tesla at 57, but like I feel like that I'm buying Tesla at like 400.
Yeah.
And the ARC lady came out and said Tesla's going to be 3,000 next year. So I will gamble that.
Yeah.
Just to be in there. And I still, the exit strategy, I got 11 years left. I mean, Mason doesn't go to college for another 11 years.
Yeah.
So I got to imagine it's going to go up in value.
Absolutely.
And if not, drink it. It is what it is,
I was speaking earlier on to someone, and 30 years ago, just for my own personal use, not for business, I bought an Apple Mac. 30 years ago, if I spent that, what was probably $1,000, put the $1,000 into Apple shares, Apple stock, I'd be retired now. But,
40 years ago, I had an Apple IIe.
Nice.
That was the box and everything, and you did logo like RT90 and a little triangle moved, and it's like, whoa, what if I would have bought then?
That's mad.
And I think that like, educating this youth now on who are using stuff and saying, hey, listen, you've got an iPad, whatever you got, you should think at your young age of putting money into a share. Go buy instead your birthday money, go buy some shares. You never know. I mean, technology's there. You and I couldn't do that when we were young. Hi, stockbroker, I'm 7. I'd like to buy a share. Yeah, come with your mommy and your daddy, and like it's not like that.
And pay huge brokerage fees. Now you can do it for nothing. We have so many apps now, and I was telling my son, who's actually 23, just you haven't been to the pub because we've been in lockdown for a year, right? How much money have you saved not going to restaurants, not going out to the pub boozing? Put that money into some stocks and just see what happens, man. Just leave it there.
And that's with the whiskey. As long as it's within reason, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one of your biggest investment is probably the Macallan Edition 1. What did you pay for it? Do you remember?
I mean, Macallan Edition 1 was an interesting one because I bought one, I drank it, I bought another one. 2 hadn't come out yet. I bought another one, I drank some of it. And then 2 came out, and I really loved 2. I really resonated with the story about the Sella de Roca brothers, and I'm like, oh my God, like these are world-renowned restaurateurs. They've done something, like that's a cool thing. Didn't really think much of it. 3 came out. I'm like, ooh, I don't like this. I don't like the perfume notes. Like, that's too floral for me. I don't like it. Still, by the way, I've maybe got 1 Macallan 1 sitting, in a backup. Like, I haven't even gone there. And this is only probably 3 years ago. It's not like that long ago. And I was at a meeting somewhere. Whenever I go to meetings in new areas, I say, hey, are there any good liquor stores around? And I was in this meeting, and the guy said, oh yeah, there's a good one down the street. All right, cool. I got done with the meeting. I walked in there and I saw these Macallan 1s, and they were $89. and I said, how many do you have? And he said, I have like half a dozen. And I said, okay. And I said, how many number 2s do you have? And he's like, oh, I got about a dozen. And he had a Macallan 25 that was at like $1,600. And I said, oh, that's an older one. I like that one. And he had a Macallan 30. I didn't go for it. He wanted like $4,000 for that. And I said, if I take all of that, 19 bottles, what kind of deal will you give me? And he's like, you just made my day. I'll give you like 20% off. All right, cool. No problem. Swiped the card, got my Amex points. Hilton Hotels. I have 1.3 million points on Hilton because I always just use the same card to buy whiskey. So I win twice. I win on the whiskey and I win on the points. So yeah, my in was like nothing. Now, I took those half dozen. I was with a good friend for dinner one night who's always treated me well, and he didn't have one, and they hadn't really moved in price. By the way, at this point, they're probably like $300. I said, I'll send you one. You've always been good to me, so I sent him one. There was another one. When I cleared those shelves, I spoke to another guy who happened to live local who wanted one. And I said I left one on the shelf, but I didn't. I took them all and I felt bad. And I'm like, all right, dude, you got one. And then that's what I had. I had 4. And then about a year later, I was with my wife for a work event in Orlando, and she was working, and I'm Googling liquor store near me. And I walk into a liquor store, and it's this guy, I could already tell he was like sizing me up. And what I used to do is talk big, meaning like, oh, do you have Pappy Van Winkle? Do you have all the, and then their eyes, like the green just starts to turn. They're like, ooh, yeah, I'm going to rip this guy off. Like I paid $400 for that bottle. It's 3,000 and their gears are turning. And he's like, oh yeah, I got that, but I don't keep it in the front. I keep it in the back. And I'm looking around and he says, what else are you looking for? And I said, oh, do you have a mixture is 10 years? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, do you have Macallan number 1? And he's like, what's that? I'm like, it was like a brown box. And by now we're on Macallan 4, okay?
Yeah.
And he says, so he's thinking I'm spending thousands of dollars because I'm going to buy all these Pappies, and I'm letting him think that. And I say to him, hey, how about those 2? Just I can't afford. You want crazy money? And he's for the other stuff. And he says, well, they're $126 each. I said, and the one box was all damaged. It was pushed in the back there. And I said, that's all I can afford to take right now. And I walked out of there because I'm like, whoa, I paid $126. They're going for like $300-400 now. Like, yeah. I scored. And then when I got what they actually produced of the Macallans, it was like, it's a no-brainer that they're going for so high. And they're going for so high, in my opinion, is because it's the last affordable series of Macallan that you can buy. You can't go buy my Macallan 30 blue box unless you want to drop $7,000-8,000. You know, you can't get my Macallan red box 25 year. You can get the wooden boxes till the cows come home, but the red box you don't see very often coming out. You know, so Macallan 1 at $2,000 that it's going for now is a deal to be part and say that you're a whiskey collector, you know. And I've been guilty of creating that whole little world, like, because there's, you know, I've had the luxury of being around some serious whiskey collectors that have millions of dollars of whiskey. I'm not at that level. I got a couple of 100,000 or whatever, you know, but I'm not at that level.
No.
And I don't want to be at that level. I'm not that, like, I don't have storage facilities to handle all that kind of stuff. So when you look at it, you're like, Macallan #1. Guys are paying $2,000 right now on March 25th for that. Mind blowing.
Yeah.
You know, so I look at that. Yes, that's a good return on investment. But then you look at the last drop, you know, Buffalo Trace, 1980. That's a meteor investment. You know, that was 4,600 on shelf. They're going for 14,000 now. A month later, what's that going to be in 10 years?
Wow. Yeah, that's mad.
My Japanese whiskey, you know, like, I didn't pay much for most of that stuff. I mean, all those limited editions, I got them, except for the Yamazaki 25, I pretty much paid what they were charging for them at the airport in Narita.
Fantastic.
Luck. Very grateful for opportunities. I used to be the first man on the scene. I'm no longer the first man on the scene. There's plenty of other people. And, you know, what I have is what I have. And if I get opportunities, I get opportunities. I'm more excited now for this next part of my career on Instagram to learn. Yeah. You know, I can't collect like I used to. I have the collection, but I want to learn. I want to understand where and who and why they're doing it.
Well, so you have this, you know, you very much favor, you know, the authenticity, don't you, as well, as opposed to all the marketing, you know, spiel. It has to come from a place, because whiskey is about people ultimately, you know, and, you know, you can create the backstory, but fundamentally, you know, I think we were talking earlier on, you know, you go into the distillery now and it's very much electronics as opposed to people there actually blending, and that's still quite sad in a way, isn't it?
It looks like a Star Trek desk.
Yeah.
You know, they got all this shit, all these lights and beeps going, and they're like, you know, and it's like, hey, what happened to that guy? I want to meet that guy that was pulling with the whiskey thief, and like, ooh, that one's good, you know? Oh, turn that barrel, like, we got to do this. Now they're like, button, and you're like, ugh. I mean, I think that I saw a good joke the other day, because, you know, like, everyone and their mother right now is doing single barrels.
Yeah.
You know, you can name a single barrel after every one of your children and your neighbor's children if you wanted to. And they were like, well, is that actually the good stuff, or is that the shit that they didn't want to bottle and sell under the cork? You know, because the money is now dictated it. I mean, you know, we did a Four Roses barrel pick, and we got to hang out with Al Young, you know, before he passed away. And I wanted the history of, you're talking about a guy of 50 something years.
Amazing.
And I was like, what was it like when nobody bought whiskey and you made great whiskey and you drank it? What was that like with nothing? And he's like, it was a special moment in time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, like that. And that thing was sold out in a second because we picked a good barrel. Yeah, we did. We think we did. But you have a lot of integrity in that, what that juice was. So it's kind of a no-brainer that the juice is going to work. Us putting our name on it, cool, fun, great experience. But for me, it was all about that special 3 hours with Al and going like, tell me what it used to be like.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
You know? And that's the moment that's sad. That's the moments that's passing. You know, it's just the reality. But like everything else in life, it's what's happening.
Yeah, and whiskey's there to share, isn't it? And people in the whiskey world tend to be very generous as well in sharing, you know, the bottles that they've got open and they enjoy, because it is an experience.
Well, I always chuckle because I'll post something and people will be like, "Oh, whiskey is meant to be drank." I'm like, "You let me know when you're drinking $6,000 bottles. I'll come over."
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm going to hold it because I think it's going to be worth 10 in the next 5 years. But hey, I get it. I get where you hurt. I got the bottle and you didn't. Am I going to open it? Money is not a luxury, you know? Money is an investment tool for me. Money is a way of life. Like, I get it. And if I get the opportunity to drink it, like I was in a bar and they were pouring the Yamazaki sherry cask for like $220 a pour, I have no problem doing that. I'm just not opening my bottle that sells for $4,500.
But the bottles that cost, you know, 100 or 200, you know, you're obviously, you know, quite happy to open and enjoy them.
I have so many. How many more can I have open? You
Exactly,
know, like
exactly.
I tell people my rule of thumb: if it's under 400, I will consider opening it.
Yeah.
But I personally don't go buy. I mean, I probably got 100 and something open bottles.
Yeah.
How much can I drink? You know, because when I drink, it's to enjoy it. I'm not doing it to deal with my life or be social. I'm too old for that. You know, I just want to drink and enjoy it and enjoy good food. I think nobody talks about that side of it.
No, I love your food post, you know, because I was a sommelier in former life, you know, and so I'm really trying to get into the whole, you know, whiskey and in food.
It's something special. It's something special, especially like a Glendronach 18. Like that sherry is so silky, you know, and you do that with like sushi or something, it's like, it just blows it away, you know. And then you take the bourbons that are sweeter and you do that with a good piece of meat or even a burger, like just a good burger.
A bit of barbecue.
Oh, you know, this is what's supposed to be done. Now, of course, the stuff I'm drinking is not normal pours. I mean, I have an incredible challenge, as you probably did from the wine pass, is when you're out in public, seeing what the prices are for the good stuff, you're like, yeah, I'll order the stuff that's decent, but like, that's silly. I can get that bottle at my house, you know, afterwards when I go home, I'll drink it.
But it actually becomes a sport. You know, in England, we've got such a, you know, the back in the 1990s, the country house hotels, you know, all the big grandeur, and they've got these massive wine lists with wines no one was buying. And you know, if you're on the money, you could go to these restaurants for lunch or for dinner, and you just scour the wine list and almost do what you're doing in the bottle shop, and you find some, you know, some Bordeaux, you know, Grand Cru Classé Bordeaux, for far less than the actual trade price currently was. So yeah, we just go
because they have no idea there. They have no idea. It's like the guy in Orlando. It's got the Macallan #1s. He bought them 2 years ago. Exactly. Nobody cares. Everyone's buying Happy Van Winkle, and he's like, "Fuck, I can get rid of these things." You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to run restaurants, and we had I ran a Thai food restaurant that was top 100 restaurants in the country.
Nice.
And the owner just had a ridiculous wine list. And I was not above my head, you know, never understood it. But people would come in and they were paying twice what you would pay for a pad thai or a curry at normal Thai food because you were paying for this experience that we created. And then they would have no problem dropping $220 on a bottle of wine to go with their green curry. And I started to see the psychology of how wine individuals, provided it's not a rip, they will spend because it's a passion. Now, when the restaurant hit tough times and he started liquidating his older stuff, you couldn't stop them buying it. They knew. They were like, wait a second, that should be like, that restaurant 2 doors down is charging $500 a bottle. You guys are charging $350? Pour it. And we you know, to me, it was like, shit, we need to stay alive. There's a recession going on. Like, empty this whole shelf, like it's got to go.
Yeah.
And I got to imagine that that's an international thing. And if you know, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I was in
You walk in and you see that lunch menu and you're like, all right, this is going to be good,
I was in Lynbrook in Long Island, New York, and my favourite steakhouse there called Frank's, just outside of Lynbrook actually. But I remember going with my friend, and we'd usually spend $40, $50 on a bottle of wine. I looking at the list, they got a bottle of Opus One, and it was like $150 or something or other. It's like, mate, we're having this wine. There's no way I can let it just sit there, We got this amazing, beautiful steak. We're having Opus One, and it was fantastic. If you got then the steak was almost free. Yeah, love all that.
I mean, it's like I go to Chicago for business, and I walk in, and they got like some rare Willet bourbon that you don't even see that goes for thousands of dollars on the secondary, and this guy's got it just sitting on the shelf there. No one's buying it because it's $70 a pour.
Yeah.
Like that, everyone is drinking $5 pours.
Yeah.
And I walk in and I see this thing and I'm like, did I really see that? Can you bring it closer? And then they get like real weirded out, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm just checking it out. I'm like, how much? And they're like, $70.
I'll give you 40.
No. And they're like, you'd be crazy to pay that. I'm like, I'll take it double. Like, whoa, So thanks to all of this, the whole Rolex whiskey thing, it's given me an ability to see if there's ever blood in the water, and I can capitalize on it for my own personal growth, whether it's my investment or my palate. Yeah. But life's too short to drink shitty whiskey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So on that, what's your what's perhaps the oldest expression you've ever had the privilege to taste, and was it good? Did you enjoy it? What was the whole experience?
I mean, I've had, the Macallan 52 was beautiful.
Wow.
I mean, it was really, it was concentrated love that the barrel created.
Well, I love that tasting note. Concentrated love that the barrel created. That is gold.
Like the Angel Share had taken whatever they needed over the years, and what was left was just concentrated love. Because you got to imagine 52 years ago when they put that barrel together, there was a lot of love. They weren't doing it for money. They were doing it for love. And then to bring that to life 55 decades later, you've taken the epitome of the old generation with all that care and kindness and passion, and you've concentrated it. And you sip on it, and it just coats your whole mouth. And you don't want to swallow it because the moment's going to be over. And I remember just sitting in the back room going like, and just, like blowing bubbles literally in my mouth just to keep it in there because it was so delicious. Now, I've had the privilege of drinking 60-year-old Scotch. It's when the integrity of the initial setup is real, the end result is spectacular.
Yeah.
It can't fail. The 45-year-old Scotches, they can't fail. Some of the older Dalmores, what Patterson does, just having fun, and where you could become a showman thanks to all of this, like they were just having fun. I look at some of the older Compass boxes, like John was like an Iron Chef. Remember the old Iron Chef show when it was in Japanese and they had subtitles?
Not seen it.
It was a cooking show where they would have, they had Iron Chef Japanese, Iron Chef Chinese, Iron Chef, like all the specific Asian cultures, and they were the best of the best. And then restaurants would come and challenge them, the restaurant chef, and they wouldn't know what the ingredient was until the guy unveiled the ingredient. And I felt that John Glaser did the same thing with some of the original Compass boxes. He was just tinkering. He already had good whiskey. He knew he had good barrels. He knew he had it. And he was just playing. last drop, what those two families have done with last drop distillers is like my dream.
Yeah.
Two guys retired, drove around, they knew where the barrels were, they played, they had fun, and now they curate some of the best juice in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every time I get to drink last drop, I'm like blown away, because the integrity of what pre them purchasing, it's like all that love was done. Those were real workers, and no discount to the people who do it now. But those guys back there worked with a lot less and did a lot more.
Yeah.
As far as, hey, everything I put out, no accountant is telling me how many cases I need to sell. No distributor is going to use these bottles as a ransom to get other bottles. I mean, the whole game is destroyed here, because in order to buy something good, the distributor makes you buy 100 cases of shit.
Yeah.
And then that's why, and then they get mad at the store because they don't sell it at retail price. And the store's like, well, you know how long it's going to take me to get rid of all this crap?
Yeah.
So I have to cost that in, my holding costs. So I'm sorry that you can't buy this bottle for $700 and I'm charging you $4,000. But that's why. That
yeah.
gin or that vodka or that tequila that I had to buy. So it's messy. It's really messy. And it's sad, but I understand that it's business. I can't be hating on it.
Well, it's been done for, Domaine Romani Conti, in Burgundy. To get the actual Domaine Romani Conti, you could get one bottle if you bought a mixed case of 6, which had some Echuzet, Grand Echuzet, whatever in. So yeah, buy 5 other bottles, which are absolutely superb anyway, to get the golden ticket one. And that was 30 years ago. It's
that model's always
it's where you allocate it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, it's interesting for me, if you watch the last 18 months, how many bourbons are showing up on the Scotch whiskey auction websites.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, I mean, you've been in the business long enough. How many bourbons had you drank? Ever seen?
We don't see them. We don't see them over here.
Apart from them. Right? I mean, you would see Jack Daniels, but that was like behind the bar as a shot. Yeah. You wouldn't see it, and now you're seeing all these old ones popping up, across the pond, and you're going, well, that's going to drive prices up, because if the market here will not pay the price, and now these individuals have the ability to send it somewhere else, and you got to imagine that if I look at some of the bigger bourbon brands, what they've done in Asia, like bringing bourbon to Asia, and it's worked. Coming to your neck of the woods, Sugarfish, as much as he's got amazing Japanese whiskey, he's probably going to start to have a Pappy Van Winkle flight, because why not? People are going to pay for it.
Yeah. Search them out, isn't it? And I think, I was looking at Scotch whiskey just last week. 6,500 lots or something last month they had. It's just,
and not stopping anytime soon. I mean, I was buying on auction 4 years ago when nobody was really looking at it other than serious people. And, that ship too has sailed. An auction is a guaranteed place to find something limited, but a lot. That works. I can find them there. But other than that, like, it's too much. And the shipping to get it back to America is crazy. I mean, there was one company that had a COVID fee. It was like 240 pounds to bring 2 bottles over here. I'm like, I will never work with you again. Man. You basically just ripped me off on shipping.
Yeah, just fly over yourself. It's cheaper. Pick it up.
Or leave it there. Yeah, or leave it, leave it there at someone's house and pick it up when I'm ready. But it's just, listen, you can't be mad because somebody else will pay it. If I don't want it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of this whole thing.
Have you ever been to the distilleries in Scotland? Have you made it over here?
No, I was supposed to come out. Last year was supposed to be a big year of traveling.
Yeah.
Didn't make any of that. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I really, when I do distilleries, I try to the best of my ability to be able to get as close to the people that are actually doing the work and not the marketing company that's, you know, having me, you know, take pictures of the new tasting room. It's like, I don't, you know, I want to go in the back room with, you know, the Gavin and David who's worked there for 45 years.
Yeah.
And I want to have a drink with him and be like, what was it like? Because that to me shows the integrity of the brand. But I get it. It's money, and it's real money now. These tasting rooms, distillery tours, all that stuff. I mean, there's a phenomenon going on, and people are like, aren't you worried it's going to slow down? I'm like, why would it slow down? Really, why?
Yeah, just more and more people getting into it, aren't there? It's just going to get fueled. And then the beauty, you know, for whiskey is it's a stable product. I mean, that's just such a benefit, isn't it? And rarity. It's got all the markings, and you know.
Oh, listen, if you can sell the dream that it's really hard to get, then the price goes up. I mean, they have to. I mean, you look at these auctions with Macallan #1, thousands every month. You know, and it's not the same one. It's a brand new group coming in and starting to be a whiskey collector. And the next month, a brand new group coming in and starting. And I'm like, whoa, like this is not, you know, people say, what's your exit on Macallan #1? I'm like, at 5,000, I would consider selling a bottle. You know, I would consider selling one. I mean, it's ironic to me if I look at the last Rolex watch I bought, basically was a Macallan #1 and a bourbon. So my total cost to pick up a $7,000 watch was like $350.
Yeah, that's mad, isn't it?
Listen, it's mad, and I think cryptocurrency is going to be the next kicker.
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be guys. You know, I told one of the big auction houses, which doesn't auction whiskey, who came to me and said, you know, when you decide to exit, we would like to help sell your portfolio. And I said, I would consider that, but I would only do it if you guys were accepting cryptocurrency, because there's many people that bought the stuff for $1, and they're doing the same thing I did with the Rolex. They're like, wait a second, like I can buy a $300,000 whiskey collection for six Bitcoin. And those 6 Bitcoin cost me $6,000. I bought them for $1,000 each. Not a bad deal.
Yeah.
You know, I got hit up yesterday by a company that sells these NFTs.
Yeah.
You know, these.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we would like to pay you to create one. You know, and I'm like, you guys are getting it. You're getting it now. What they offered me was too low, and I went back and counted them. I'm like, I wouldn't do it for that low of a price. So I don't know if they'll come, you know, like I get brands coming to me all the time, like to be featured, you know, with me, because I don't have time. This is not my full-time job. I have a real job. This is my passion project. So if I'm going to spend time, it's going to cost you a good chunk of change, and it's okay if you don't want to pay it. I'm not going to be upset. You know, like life will move on. I offer you eyeballs. I offer you global eyeballs.
Yeah, an amazing.
I'm not just an American Instagram page. I'm a global Instagram page, and I did that on purpose. You know, I targeted the Spains, the Brazils, the Indias, the Argentinas who drink a ton of whiskey. And I went for those eyeballs to say, because what I want to talk to a brand is like, hey, if you're just like a thing here, it doesn't work. But if you really want to show the world, that's what you want to come to me for.
So how do you get into Argentina, etc.? What was your method to do that?
The method to do it was find out what they drink. I mean, you know, I've been very clear that Johnny Walker is great for getting follows. Really is. You know, the whole world knows Johnny Walker. Yeah. So when you do targeted Instagram ads, focus country specific, using a brand like that, you get all the people in that country that are interested in that brand.
Very clever.
And they don't have to speak English.
No, they understand.
And I did that early on. I identified, because I didn't want to be just some hometown hero. I wanted to be the #1. And the goal is just to keep growing it, because a potential exit strategy could be for a large brand to come and buy the whole thing.
Yeah.
buy all the goodwill I've created and retain me to work for, let's say, a year and keep up my posts. But what you're getting is all those eyeballs. And yes, I happen to drink and eat and do some FU experiences, but I am also very keen on layering in stuff that's normal. I mean, growing up as a kid, Johnny Walker Blue was like the top shelf.
Yeah.
He now like shit,
Yeah.
like, and even when I ran restaurants, if you had a group coming in, you wrote in the contract, no top shelf, including Johnny Walker Blue, because if it was open bar, these guys knew. They were like, Johnny Walker Blue, Johnny Walker Blue, and you're like, and then I got into this world, and I'm like, great blended Scotch whiskey, great tradition, great marketing, great everything. But wow, I can drink a lot of other stuff that will cost me a lot more and be a whole different experience.
For sure.
But in building Rolex Whiskey, you have to have some kind of commonality with everybody. And the commonality is the love of the whiskey. I mean, I didn't find bourbon. I didn't grow up drinking bourbon in South Africa. I don't know any bourbon in South Africa. We drank J&B, Johnny Walker Black, and Shivers. Those were your three whiskeys in South Africa growing up. And when I would visit you guys in across the pond, it'd be the same thing.
Yeah,
there wasn't really, there'd be a couple of Glens kind of in there, like a Fiddick or a Livet, but if you didn't know what that was, you weren't really jumping on it.
Yeah, no, yeah. That's it, and but people start with a blend, Teachers or Bells or Cutty Sark.
Bells was the cheaper one. If you wanted to get
just a blend.
Wanted to get shockered, you bought Bells.
Yeah, yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, and it was only an old man's drink. No one. I was in a Michelin-starred restaurant, and all we had, the only whiskeys we had were, those for shots, and then Glenfiddich and Glenmorangie, I think, and that was the extent of our offering. Our wine list was out of this world, but whiskey.
Well, and that's going back to our comment earlier about you walking into a restaurant that has a wine list that is amazing, and you're like, whoa, like, I feel that whoever sells the dream to the restaurants has done a really good job of giving them the core range, but nothing more exciting.
No.
They're like, hey, here's the rugby team. You got all the positions, but none of these guys are going to, none of these guys are standout. None of them are Olympic athletes. They're just the core. It's great. And that's where I get bummed out, because depending on the caliber, if it's a Michelin star, they're charging way more for that's a teenager on the rugby team. What are you doing? Like, how are you charging that much for that? You're charging me Olympic pricing. Yeah. And I get frustrated, and and I try to tell restaurants, like, let me help you for free. Like, there's a certain person that just doesn't want to be ripped off and will actually spend the $150 on Opus One, because they know it's a good deal.
Yeah.
But you can't charge not Opus One for $150 and expect him to have respect for your list. Now, you got him up from a $40 bottle to a $150, no problem, because he saw the value. But I feel the same way. If I walk in and brand X, because I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, brand X 12-year is selling for $30 a pour. And I'm like, the whole bottle costs $28. What are you doing?
Exactly.
And they're like, well, the stakes are $100 here, so we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. But shit, man, how about you give me a $65 option of something really good? But they don't have to. We're the guys that know too much.
And also, we in the restaurant, we're a Michelin star. There's only, I think, in the whole country, there was only 46 at the time. But yeah, our markup was very simple. We just doubled the price and added tax. Whereas in London, it was 4 times the cost price plus tax. And it's just affordable, and people, they could have lovely.
I remember wine was marked up by 4.
Yeah.
And whiskey was divide the bottle by 17 and multiply that by 3, and that's what you charge per pour.
Yeah.
And then whiskeys became in demand, and they're like, well, we can charge by 10 now.
Yeah.
And they'll pay it, and you're like, because I know too much.
Yeah.
But You know, when I go into liquor stores and I say, oh my God, your pricing's crazy. And the guy's like, well, people pay it. And the one guy was very clear. He's like, Gavin, you come in here and you grind me on pricing. Right behind you, an hour later, a plastic surgeon is going to walk in who wants to buy a gift for a friend. And he sees $2,000 bottle on the shelf. He takes it. He doesn't give a fuck. Swipes his card and he's good to go. You're trying to needle me because the bottle should be 600, you know? Hey, don't buy it then.
Yeah. And then in restaurants, it's always the corporate card paying as well. You know, so that was, you know, driving the prices higher and higher.
And I don't think that's changed. I mean, I think so COVID in this country, because there was no more on-premise, all of a sudden, grocery stores had like super high-end whiskeys.
Yeah.
You know, I've posted about, you know, Highland Park 1976, one aisle away from the produce. I want to see the guy that's walking around saying, oh shit, my wife's list says strawberries, blueberries, yogurt. Oh whiskey. Shit, a $12,000 bottle of whiskey. I'll take that too in my cart. You know, but the distributors went to the grocery stores and they're like, hey buddy, we're going to give you a revamp. We're going to buy a fancy case for you. We're going to make it look pretty. We're going to buy out the inventory that hasn't moved. In exchange, you're going to take this stuff. And they did, because same as in the restaurants, when the wine guys would come in and offer me a free menu, we'll do the menus for you. Oh, you're going to print them out? Oh yeah, I'll take that. So now they're doing the same game at the grocery stores. And the crazy part is the grocery stores aren't set up for that. So there's one store that has just an amazing whiskey collection. And like I said, it's 2 miles away from produce. Well, here in California, the security guards will not stop you if you rob the store, basically, for, I think it's under $300 is the number.
Really?
So these guys are coming in now and they're popping open the little seal on the top where the magnet is, opening up the glass, taking the whiskey bottle and just walking out. And there's cameras and everything and nobody's doing anything. So now the whiskey companies have to give a dummy bottle. So you buy the expensive bottle and it comes with a dummy bottle and the real bottle's in the back in the safe.
Yeah.
This is happening and you're like, how would they have known? How? You know? And once things get back to normal, you know, over here, outdoor dining and all that kind of stuff, and limited indoor dining, I don't know if it's going to go back to normal, because I have friends in the business that run very successful, very fancy restaurants. And they said, yo, Gavin or David is going to drop $400 on a food meal and another $400 on alcohol. But I have to now have like a sommelier. I have to have 2 servers waiting on them because the bill is $800 and I got to keep the lights on in the restaurant. Well, how about David just comes and grabs $400 in takeout, goes back to his house and drinks from his $1 million wine list, and I didn't have to have any extra labor. So my money is the same. My expenses went down. And yes, the experience of, hey, I got 20 people, Michelin star with like, all the food comes at the same time. These guys are like, fuck it, we just like the food.
Yeah.
Like, we'll take it home and eat it. Okay, it doesn't have to be piping hot like I would complain in the restaurant. And you're like, does that paradigm shift? Because restaurant takeouts at that high level continue. I follow all those Michelin star restaurants in Paris and in London, and it's like, they're like, here's a feast for $300, you know, and it's like, oh, sorry, it's sold out, you know, because the guy who's eating didn't stop eating. He didn't lose his money. It sucks for the lifetime server or the lifetime bartender that's been doing it for 50 years at that famous steakhouse in New Jersey who's worked there forever. The restaurant's closed.
Yeah, that's it.
You know? But the game is changing.
Yeah, completely. Gavin, thank you very much indeed for your time. I hugely appreciate it. I think I could chat for you for hours and hours, and I look forward to coming to San Diego and sharing a glass or something with you. Let's do it. We'll get on the golf course and drink there. It's way more calmer. Yeah, but I'm I'm in Japan actually, hopefully in July for the Olympics. So I'm hoping, to get to a few little whiskey bars out there and also get to some distilleries if we're allowed to. Which
I tell you, if you can find it, if you can get to Chichibu, I heard Ichiro's is just amazing.
Really?
Yeah, Ichiro's malt is doing, they're doing something special there. Yeah. Definitely a brand I'm watching very hard. Yeah, there's so many of them, it's hard to invest, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go out there, a few days early, week early, and head up to the distilleries. I think should be a good trip.
Enjoy. I know our paths will cross. I appreciate you having me on today, my man.
Gavin, thank you very much, Lisa.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Okay, bye.
Bye.